Hello everyone, Tommy with Studio Sense here. Today's video is going to be one of those fun videos that we're not going to take a lot of time to go through how a fragrance smells and all the notes that make up a fragrance and which ones I'm going to recommend to you, because this is all about my top 10 best new designer releases of 2024 according to you. And I'm going to go over what that means, the you, who that encompasses, when we return right after this. Welcome back everyone. So what we're talking about today are the top 10 new releases of 2024 according to you. There are two fragrance websites that we're going to be referencing in this video, and that is FRAGRANTICA.com and PARFUMO.com. They seem to represent two different personalities or two different types within the fragrance community. Now I'm not going to go into a pie chart of what ethnicity and what geographical area these seem to kind of cater to. I'll leave that completely up to you. You'll have to excuse me as I'm going to be referencing my handy dandy tablet here, just because I'm not going to memorize all these results, although I do know most of them. I'm going to have to reference this to give you kind of some of the numbers. We're basically in the first quarter of December, so I'm probably not going to do another video like this. So that's why I call it the final top 10 best new designer releases of 2024. This list is according to FRAGRANTICA.com, the voters on FRAGRANTICA.com. As we typically do, we're going to start with number 10 and work our way down to number 1. What I did when a fragrance tied, because sometimes there were 3 or 4 fragrances that had the same score, is I went to those individual fragrances and whichever one had the most voters is the one that was kicked up to the top. Statistically, that just made the most sense. And again, these results could be different even now. They're going to be changing on a day-to-day basis, the more people that vote, of course. Now keep in mind, the number of voters is going to be highly impacted how long the fragrance has been out. Some of these fragrances are relatively new, and so a lot of people haven't had a chance to try them out yet. So according to FRAGRANTICA.com, coming in at 10th place as best new release of 2024 is Stronger With You Tobacco by Emporio Armani. Stronger With You Tobacco, fantastic gourmand fragrance. Fragrantica has a rating of 0 to 5, 5 being the absolute best, 0 being the absolute worst, of course. Stronger With You Tobacco had a score of 4.23 and 548 voters. Alright guys, coming in 9th place as best new release of 2024 according to Fragrantica.com is Invictus Parfum. I was kind of happy to see Invictus in the list. There's a lot of people naysay on this. You might make the assumption that Fragrantica voters would vote against Invictus. In this case, they didn't. It did come in 9th place with a score of 4.24 and 1,266 voters. Alright guys, coming in 8th place is a fragrance by Bulgari. It is Bulgari Pour Homme Eau de Parfum. We hadn't seen a new release by Bulgari in this line in a very long time. On Fragrantica, it received a score of 4.28 with 126 voters. Alright guys, coming in at number 7 in 7th place on Fragrantica.com as best new release of 2024 is Boss the Scent Elixir by Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss, of course, getting into the elixir game as everyone is. Boss the Scent Elixir had a score of 4.30 with 971 voters. Alright, moving our way down the list, coming in at number 6 is a fragrance by Jean Paul Gaultier. It is Le Beau Paradise Garden. Le Beau Paradise Garden, beautiful eau de parfum fragrance from Jean Paul Gaultier. It also had a rating of 4.30, the same as Boss the Scent Elixir, but get this, it had a voter number of 4,653. That is dramatically different than Boss the Scent Elixir, and so that's why it came in as number 6. We're down to our top 5 final best new releases of 2024 according to Fragrantica.com. Coming in at number 5 is Boss Bottle Absolu by Hugo Boss, a relatively new release. It came in with a score of 4.36 and 763 voters. Coming in 4th place as best new release of 2024 according to Fragrantica.com is Habit Rouge Parfum by Guerlain. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to try that one out, that's one that I recommend trying. It came in with a score of 4.37 with 585 voters. Coming in 3rd place as Best New Designer Release 2024, according to Fragrantica.com, is Armani Code Parfum. It had a score of 4.38 and 306 voters. Kind of an unusually low amount of people voted on this fragrance because it's been out for a while, like earlier part of the year. I actually happen to agree with that rating. It's a really good fragrance. All right, guys, we're down to the top 2 fragrances. Coming in at number 2 is another Guerlain fragrance. It's L'Homme Idéal Parfum. I have yet to do my first impressions on this fragrance for you guys. It's coming out very soon, so be on the lookout for that. L'Homme Idéal Parfum got a score of 4.45. 624 people voted on it. All right, we are now down to the number 1 fragrance, best designer release of 2024. According to Fragrantica.com, the voters on Fragrantica, is Scandal Pour Homme Absolu. No surprise there. What a fantastic gourmand fragrance featuring the note of Maribel plum. It had a rating of 4.48, 1,238 voters. So those are the best new releases of 2024 according to Fragrantica. Now we're going to check out Parfumo. Parfumo.com is going to have some very different results. Some are similar, some are very different. I think you'll find it very interesting. Of course, as I'm going over this, kind of think in your mind where you would place these in a hierarchy of best from 10 to 1. What would be your favorite or least favorite? Now, just a little bit of a disclaimer, Parfumo.com has a bit of a different rating system. It is similar in that it's a numbers rating system, but they do the typical 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute best and 1 being the absolute worst. The top 10 best new designer releases of 2024. Coming in at number 10 is Spice Bomb Dark Leather. So that wasn't even on the list for Fragrantica. So Spice Bomb Dark Leather by Viktor and Rolf coming in at number 10. I literally got a compliment on it last night. I went to a restaurant to pick up a carryout and the guy was like, "Are you wearing cologne?" And I was like, "Yes." He goes, "What is it?" "That's the best thing I've ever smelled." And I had to write it down on the back of the receipt, what it was, who it was. And of course, I directed him to Studio Sense to get more information on it. But anyway, that was cool. Now, just like with Fragrantica on this Parfumo list, I'm going to give you guys the score and the number of voters. Spice Bomb Dark Leather, which I'm actually wearing today, had a rating of 7.8 with 105 votes. So coming in at number 9 is the 9th best new release of 2024, according to voters on Parfumo.com, is Acqua di Gio Profondo Eau de Parfum. So nice to see representation from the best-selling men's fragrance line, Acqua di Gio, in there with a really new release, Acqua di Gio Profondo EDP. If you've never had a woody marine fragrance, that's the way to go. Acqua di Gio Profondo had the same rating, 7.8, as Spice Bomb Dark Leather. However, it had 107 votes instead of 105, so just 2 more bumped it up. All right, guys, coming in at number 8 is Givenchy Gentleman Society Eau de Parfum Extreme. This is a really, really good coffee-oriented fragrance that I'm glad to see is getting some love from certain sites. Gentleman Givenchy Society Eau de Parfum Extreme had the same rating, 7.8, only it had 168 votes. All right, moving on down the list, coming in 7th place as best new designer release of 2024, according to Parfumo.com, is Scandal Pour Homme Absolu by Jean-Paul Gaultier. A little bit lower in the list, according to Parfumo voters, as opposed to Fragrantica, but still made it to the list. Fantastic gourmand fragrance again. Scandal Pour Homme Absolu had a rating of 7.9 with 259 votes. All right, coming in 6th place is Habit Rouge Parfum by Guerlain. This actually was in Fragrantica's list as well, so glad to see representation by Guerlain. Fantastic fragrance line, great fragrance company. Habit Rouge Parfum by Guerlain had a rating of 8.1 with 143 votes. All right, we are down to the top 5 best designer new releases of 2024, according to Parfumo voters, Parfumo.com. And coming in at number 5 is Ferragamo Red Leather. Now, Ferragamo Red Leather didn't even make it to the list on Fragrantica, but Parfumo voters voted this fragrance up. And I gotta say, I was happy to see that in the list because I am a wearer of this fragrance and I recommend it. I recommend the entire line. This is a really good addition to it. Of course, spicy leather probably being the best, right up there with intense leather. Ferragamo Red Leather had a rating of 8.2, but it only had 12 voters. So, you know, you got to figure at some point in the future that's going to change. But in this case, I agree. It's a really solid fragrance line, and that's a great addition to the line. So coming in at number 4 is Emporio Armani's Stronger With You Tobacco. So Stronger With You Tobacco taking a much higher place in the list. According to Parfumo voters, Stronger With You Tobacco by Emporio Armani had a rating of 8.3 with 100 votes. All right, we are down to the top 3 best new designer releases of 2024 according to Parfumo.com voters. Coming in at number 3 is L'Homme Ideal Parfum. So there we see Parfumo voters agreeing with Fragrantica voters, pretty much, because it came in second place on Fragrantica's list, and here we are, it's number 3, coming in third place on Parfumo.com. L'Homme Ideal Parfum by Guerlain had a rating of 8.3, just like Stronger With You Tobacco, but it had 162 votes. Coming in at second place is Armani Code Parfum. So we see that Fragrantica and Parfumo users are pretty much agreeing for the top 3, close anyway, although you'll see a drastically different result as number 1. But at least they're really close to agreeing. Armani Code Parfum also had a rating of 8.3, but it had 165 votes. So you can see several of these are neck and neck. All right, the number 1 best new designer release according to voters on Parfumo.com is Boss Bottle Absolu. Now this kind of surprised me. I happen to agree with it. Hugo Boss is all about releasing crowd-pleasing fragrances, and yet I feel like Boss Bottle Absolu is on the more divisive niche side of things, which is unusual for Hugo Boss. And so I really feel like Boss Bottle Absolu is one of their best releases, period, in the Boss Bottle line, and I'm really happy to see that a lot of people agree with me. Boss Bottle Absolu won with somewhat of a landslide with a rating of 8.4 and 307 votes. Alright guys, it's time for some honorable mentions on the side of Fragrantica.com. These fragrances all got a rating of higher than 4.0. Some were 4.15, some were 4.11. They are Phantom Intense by Paco Rabanne, Carolina Herrera Birds of Paradise, CH Men, Birds of Paradise, Givenchy Gentleman Society EDP Extreme, Angel for Men Phantasm, The Most Wanted Intense by Azzaro, Man in Black Parfum by Bulgari, and Boss Bottle Triumph Elixir was also a 4.11. Now on the side of Parfumo.com, these all had a 7.7 rating. They didn't make the list, but they were just under making the list, and they are Boss Bottle Triumph Elixir, Boss the Scent Elixir, Bulgari Pour Homme Eau de Parfum, H24 Herbes Vives, and Kenzo Homme Santal Marin. Now on the flip side, a couple of fragrances that you would expect to get a higher rating were actually rated pretty low. I thought you guys might find this interesting. Y Elixir had a rating of 6.6 on Parfumo and a rating of 3.53 on Fragrantica, so that's pretty low. KEDP Intense had a rating of 6.9, which isn't too bad, 54 votes on Parfumo, and a rating of 3.67 on Fragrantica. Now this one kind of surprised me, but then again not so much. Christian Dior's Sauvage Eau Forte, it is an alcohol-free fragrance, got a rating of 5.7, that's 259 votes on Parfumo, and on Fragrantica a rating of 2.38, really low. So again, may come as no surprise, or might be surprising. Either way, interesting information. How did that compare to your guys' lists? Well, that's it for today, guys. I know it took probably a little bit longer than you anticipated because we went over 2 different websites and the results. Out of all the ones that we listed, which is your favorite? Go ahead and put your results or your thoughts about that in the comments down below. Guys, I'm going to let you go. This is it for today's video. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, thank you so much for your continued support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video review.